What is the value of overturning tables and chasing people with a whip? I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Before we get into today's program, I want to let you know, in case you didn't already know, that President Reagan's wife, Nancy Reagan, passed away on Sunday, March 6th. She was 94 years old, and she and President Reagan had an incredible marriage. I encourage you to read the book, if you have never done so, I Love You, Ronnie, the love letters of Ronald Reagan to Nancy Reagan. And I promise you, if you've got a sentimental part in your heart, you will weep. I have read the book, and I shed tears as I read it. The love letters that he wrote to her were just so amazing, so endearing, and showed a devotion and romance that they had with each other for decades. And also, it showed that he was incredibly articulate, incredibly intelligent. There's a lot of people who suggest that President Reagan was good at reading cue cards. When you read some of those letters, you'll see that he was really good at writing them. May God grant Mrs. Reagan the joy of life eternal, and we thank God again for President Reagan and for the good that he did to this country. Let's use President Reagan as a starting point as we go forward in today's program. Now, we have an awful lot that we have to cover, and we'll talk about it today and tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we have yet another primary with 4 states, all of them proportional states, up for grabs. And we'll talk more about those states tomorrow night. Perhaps a starting point for today's program would be the fact that in the year 1979 and 1980, when President Reagan was then candidate Reagan, when he was running, there was a hue and cry from the Republican establishment. They did not want him as the president. They wanted George Bush, the elder. They did not want Reagan. There were journalists at that time who were comparing Ronald Reagan, ready, to Adolf Hitler. On multiple occasions, whether they were allusions or direct comparisons, they compared Ronald Reagan, our beloved president, our beloved 40th president, they compared him to Adolf Hitler. Anyone with a knowledge, even a rudimentary knowledge of history, a basic knowledge of the facts, knows that such a comparison was ludicrous. Not that it is ludicrous, that at the very moment that those words were spoken, it showed an idiocy, a stupidity, a vulgar prejudice against Ronald Reagan and what he stood for, of the person who said the words. Ronald Reagan was not on trial. All right? I mean, to some degree he was. You have to look at his policies, look at what he's saying, and then decide if you want him to be president. But to compare him with the maniac, the dictator, the mass murderer, Adolf Hitler, was at the time patently absurd. And now, to my shock, actually I'm not that shocked, but to my disgust, Glenn Beck, this man, many of you know who he is. He has a TV show, he has a radio show, he has a network called The Blaze. He was being interviewed over the weekend by George Stephanopoulos and whipped out this, held it up to the camera, a ballot showing that Adolf Hitler himself was in fact elected. That's right, in case you didn't know, Adolf Hitler was elected. The difference between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. I actually can't even believe that I'm saying this. I can't believe that I have to point it out. Okay? But you know what? I'm not going to descend to that level. Because basically what he's doing is mix and match. He's saying, look, Adolf Hitler was elected and he was a maniac. Well, read Mein Kampf or portions of it, and you will see why Winston Churchill said that Hitler was a madman that had to be hemmed in and destroyed. I ask you, the viewer, all right, what has Donald Trump said that is Hitler-esque? Is protecting our border like Hitler? It wasn't that he said, I hate Mexicans. He said, I want to protect their border. I love Mexicans. Let them come in. Hitler said he hated Jews. He blamed the Jews for the defeat of Germany in World War I. Hitler wanted gun control. He did not want the average German citizen to be able to have their own weaponry. Okay? Donald Trump says he protects the Second Amendment. Do I have to go down the list really and truly? It shows a lack of panic from Glenn Beck and from others, but from Glenn Beck in particular, and a level of intellectual dishonesty. Glenn, you're a better man than this. At least I thought you were. Don't push the envelope of propriety. Don't push the envelope of truth. You can say that you don't like Donald Trump's policies on a temporary ban on Muslims. You can say you don't want to build a wall. You can say you don't want a trade war. There's a lot that you can say. But at the end of the day, don't lower yourself to this level intellectually because you don't sound like somebody who is well-read or who can connect the dots logically. And if you'd like to carry this discussion on in a public forum, I'd be happy to do so. Or we can respond show to show. But to compare Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler is ludicrous. And if you don't know it, then you've disqualified yourself from being a guiding light or a voice into the hearts of hundreds of thousands of people. Now, for those of you who think I'm being a little too hard on Glenn Beck, listen to his words from a radio show last week.
If I were on the stage, I would have said, have you been listening to him tonight?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Have you been listening to what I say about him?
And also, why would you be sitting
I
in
believe
someone's
these
shoes?
things.
Oh
man, if I were close enough and I had a knife, really, I mean,
Wait, what?
The stabbing just wouldn't stop.
Really? You're talking about stabbing repeatedly Donald Trump? That shows something coming unhinged internally, Glenn. It shows something coming unhinged internally. And you need to calm down. You might need to sit down with someone and talk. Friend, we are in the middle of producing a 14-part epic television series called What Would Mohammed Do? Explaining Islam and ISIS to the West. I have a master's degree in international terrorism, and I have studied ancient Islamic texts for over a decade. And we are going to do a very paced and a very scholarly look at Muhammad's life and see the connection of his life to today's headlines. Well, we need your help on 3 levels. 1, we need help with some security measures. 2, we need help with some gear for the studio. And 3, we need help with some computers. I'm inviting you to go to the GoFundMe site that you see on the screen and watch the pilot for episode 1. You'll get a feel for what it's going to be, and I promise you, you're going to be excited. You'll be challenged, and you're going to want your friends to see it. And then after you've seen it, give what you can to help us with this project. Thank you. At the beginning of the program, I alluded to overturning tables. For those of you who are readers of the scriptures, you might remember the story of Jesus overturning the money changers' tables inside of the temple on 2 separate occasions, at the beginning of his public ministry and then at the end. All right, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, both of them are overturning the tables. And it's almost poetic that the 2 of them each won 2 primaries on Super Saturday, right? They're still Trump is still leading almost by 100 delegates, but Cruz is showing some impressive staying power. I'll get to that in a minute. But let's just focus on the tables. Both Ted Cruz and Donald Trump consider themselves and are considered by the media establishment, and more importantly, by the Republican establishment. They are considered to be outsiders, insurgents. Dare I use the word? Revolutionaries. Or, to simply use the illusion, they are overturning the tables. Now, clearly, having the money changers' tables inside of Solomon's temple was disgusting. It was an abomination. It was so anti-religious, so unholy. But the power structure of that day in Jerusalem, the power structure, the establishment, had so corrupted what was going on that with a wink and a nod, and perhaps who knows who's getting something in return, the money changers went from being at the city gate to being outside of the temple, to being close to the temple, to being, well, just for convenience, in the temple. The priests knew it. The people who were in charge knew it. They were all involved in it at one level or another. And it certainly was not in the interests of the everyday man or woman of Israel. And as Jesus said, you've turned my Father's house into a den of thieves. It should be a house of prayer. You made it a den of thieves. The value of overturning the tables is to expose the evil, the treachery, the duplicity, the hypocrisy, to expose the fact that an elite are corrupted and are taking advantage of the average person who just wants to go about their business and come and pray and make a sacrifice at Solomon's temple. It shows the presence of those tables inside of the temple showed that the rules, what was right and wrong, did not matter as much as power and money. And that's what we have right now with the Republican establishment. They despise Donald Trump. They despise Ted Cruz, not because of their policies, not because of what they say. Virtually everything that Donald Trump and Ted Cruz is saying, if you take away the personalities, if you take away some of the expletives, if you put those words into the mouth of Jeb Bush, and he said them in a pensive way, policy issues, protecting the border, temporary ban on Muslims. If you took those things, marriage between a man and a woman, reigning in the Supreme Court, maybe restoring waterboarding to extract information from terrorists, if you took those policy positions and put them in the mouth of someone who was A, inside the establishment, and B, said them without the rancor that Trump has, and without the baggage of the anti-Mitch McConnell attitude that Ted Cruz has. Most of those positions, if not all of them, if they were said just right, except for maybe the Muslim one, most of those positions would be totally acceptable. It'd be like the money changer saying to the priest, you know, we've got to get a new batch of doves in because some of these we may have a flaw in. Oh, okay, we'll look into it. Or musing aloud that perhaps we should change what we're doing just a little bit so it doesn't cause offense to the average Jew. The problem is that Cruz and Trump are not playing nice. It's the attitude that they have that enrages the establishment. And it's the fact that they are holding the establishment in the contempt that they have earned. And that's what Jesus showed when he overturned the tables. I mean, we don't know if he hit anyone with a whip. We know that it says that he made a whip and he had a whip. Maybe he cracked it. Maybe he hit people. The scriptures are silent on it. But we know that he upended the tables. We know that he exposed the corruption of the leaders of that day. And we know that the common people loved him. They loved him. And that's the issue with Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, is the average person who feels just discarded, ignored, run over roughshod by the power structure, by those with power and money or both, that we've had it. We've had it. And we love what Trump and Cruz are doing. Some people hate Trump, love Cruz. Some people love Cruz and hate Trump, or love Trump. I mean, you follow me. Or they love them both. But if you look at those who hate them both, these are not people that are motivated by principle or by policy. These are people that are clutching onto power and money as if it was the life rope of a drowning man, because they don't want their tables overturned. They want to maintain the status quo because it's what keeps them in their private jets and keeps them in their big fancy offices. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas referred to John Locke twice in his dissent in the Obergefell decision. John Locke is referred to as the philosopher of American liberty. He was a genius, and he not only believed in natural law, but he believed in revealed law, the Word of God, the law of God. And he is one of the two most influential philosophers on the founders of this republic. We are offering you this book, and I'm going to give you my book as well, The Sword. The Sword, the subtitle is The Blessing of Righteous Government and the Overthrow of Tyrants. It looks at what is the legitimate purpose of government and when is it our right to overthrow government, like they did with the Declaration of Independence. We will send you these two books if you simply pay for the shipping and handling, $8, and then give whatever else you want. And by the way, the $8 doesn't cover our cost, but if that's all you can afford, we'll send them to you for the $8. God bless you. Friend, you're not going to want to miss tomorrow's show. Tomorrow night, as you know, we will get the returns on Hawaii, Idaho, Mississippi, and Michigan. Donald Trump is way ahead in Michigan and Mississippi where there is polling. Hawaii and Idaho have literally no statewide polling. So we don't know who's winning. But we are going to introduce a new tool for you to use if you've got a computer. We are creating a tool that has every state, every delegate, a number of delegates for the state, whether the state is proportional and what the threshold is, and whether the state is winner take all. And we're going to explain all of that on tomorrow night's show to help equip you to understand what's going on from now until June the 7th, when the final batch of Republican primaries happens. Let's take a quick look at what happened over the weekend. Donald Trump won Kentucky and Louisiana. Ted Cruz won Maine and Kansas. Now, the Republican Party set up a system for this election year that is confusing for those of us that have been watching primaries for years or even decades. While Ted Cruz won 2 and Donald Trump won 2, it's important for bragging rights, but what matters is that Ted Cruz got 64 delegates and Donald Trump got 49 delegates. That's what matters. Kasich and Rubio both did very poorly, garnering a little bit, very little. But what matters is that those states and all of the states that vote tomorrow night are proportional states. I want to applaud the Republican Party. They had a goal in mind, and the goal is actually working. If you've been watching presidential elections for decades, you know that usually by the third or fourth primary, you've got Iowa, then you've got New Hampshire, and then it's going to go maybe to South Carolina or maybe to Florida. Sometimes it was Utah or Nevada, rather. What would happen is that money would stop coming to candidates, and the numbers would seem to be the momentum and the numbers would seem to be so much in favor of one candidate that everyone else would drop out, and then it was just kind of a foregone conclusion. We saw a little bit of a brawl going on in 2000 with McCain and Huckabee. I'm sorry, in 2008 with McCain and Huckabee, and then in 2012 with Romney and Santorum. But what they're after right now is that by having almost all of the states that we have had thus far be proportional states, it gives people a chance to stay in the game. So, this past Saturday, all of them were proportional states. So, if you hit the threshold of 15 or 20% of the vote, you came away with some delegates. This coming Tuesday, they're all proportional states. But next Tuesday, when you've got Ohio and Florida and other states, Missouri, these are not proportional states. It is winner take all. Even if the winner only has 32%, he's walking away with all the delegates. So over the weekend, Ted Cruz gathered the momentum and the steam and the credibility to say, I'm the only guy that can stop Trump. I'm the only alternative to Trump. Marco Rubio and John Kasich fell flat on their faces, did very poorly. And that is why you're starting to hear people say Kasich and Rubio need to get out of the race. Who is not saying that? Who is not saying that Rubio and or Kasich need to get out of the race? I'll tell you, and then I'll explain it in the next segment. It's the Republican establishment. They are frantic to keep them in the race. They hate Trump and they hate Cruz. They don't want a two-man race between those two. As far as they're concerned, it's like the apocalypse horses coming to take away them. I'll be right back to explain it. Friend, this TV show represents a mission. It's to be a voice of resistance to the evil in the land, but also to inspire people like you to take a stand at any level that you might be able to equip you, to inspire you, to challenge you, to give you the rhetorical ammunition that you need. But we still have to pay bills. This program, as you know if you're a regular viewer, we don't spend a lot of time raising money. We don't spend a lot of time saying, oh, you need to buy this and we're going to run it. No, we're bringing you a message, but we still have bills that we need to pay. I'm asking you, if you have been blessed by this show, to please go to our website or send a check to the address you see on the screen or call the phone number that you see on the screen and use your credit card and to give $50 or $100 or $500 just to help us meet our normal expenses. And we'll keep bringing you this hard-hitting show. Make no bones about it. Mitt Romney is running for president. The establishment is running behind Mitt Romney. Let me explain. At the end of last week, Mitt Romney said, if you live in Florida, vote for Rubio on March 15th. If you live in Ohio, vote for Kasich. And then if you live anywhere else and and Cruz and any of the other candidates are doing well, vote for them in those states. What's the goal? Deny Trump the nomination. But also, if he wanted to have Cruz be the nominee, he could just as easily say, Rubio needs to drop out, Kasich needs to drop out, let's get this down to a two-man race, and then all of us can throw in behind Ted Cruz and stop Donald Trump. He's not doing that. Why? Because Mitt Romney wants to be the president. If he can keep Donald Trump from getting 1,237 delegates before he goes to the convention, the party elite are saying, we throw Trump overboard, we throw Cruz overboard, and then we look at, let's see, well, who's not tarnished by all the mudslinging? Who looks presidential? Who's got a good tan? It's Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney. He's got weird underwear. That's what Mormons do. But he's still, on the outside, he looks good. Okay? So, Rubio is probably, somebody has already probably whispered in his ear, you can be next in line for the presidency. You can be Mitt Romney's VP. We'll let a brawl take place at the convention, and then we'll give Rubio the VP pick, maybe Kasich, and give Romney the slot for president. I guarantee you that's what's in their mind. And over the weekend, Mitt Romney was asked flat out, would you say no if you were drafted at the convention? And he said, of course I won't say no. Why would he be putting up this type of agenda to stop Trump but not cause Cruz to win, who's the only person with a chance to do so. Because he wants Rubio and Kasich to stay in the race, muddy the water, keep Trump or Cruz from getting to the threshold of 1,237 so that Mitt Romney can come in as the knight in shining armor and he can be the nominee. And then the Republican establishment can say to us plebeians, well, we're sorry you didn't get what you wanted. Yeah, we've thrown you overboard, but now can you please come back and help us elect Romney?